Brand visibility is the extent a brand is seen, recognized, and remembered by its target audience across multiple different marketing channels. It measures just how often a brand can appear among its potential customers through touchpoints such as search engines, social media, advertising, and traditional physical locations. High visibility often ensures that a brand will be considered during a purchasing decision. Meanwhile, according to a 2025 report from Tenet, it reveals that 77% of marketing executives consider effective branding as a critical component to business growth. Meanwhile, a 2025 study published by Nielsen found that 92% of consumers trust recommendations from trusted individuals or trusted sources over traditional advertisements. My friends, this is good news for my friend Lynn Aronberg. She is an internationally recognized public relations expert and the principal at Lynn Aronberg Public Relations, a full-service PR firm which was founded back in 2010. She's got offices in both Boca Raton and London, and she's renowned for her unmatched ability to generate consistent and high-impact media coverage. Lynn and her highly effective team of strategic communicators represent a global clientele ranging from everything from innovative startups to Fortune 500 giants and publicly traded companies. And Aronberg joined me this week to tell me all about what's behind the secret sauce of effective public relations to increase brand visibility and message reach. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend, and I'm super excited to learn about your journey in public relations. Great to see you, and happy Monday to you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, just before I ask you about your PR firm, I'm fascinated to ask you about what do you think makes a great PR message, and how important do you think it is to lean into emotions when you're crafting a PR message?
Well, I think emotions can get in the way. I think that's why having a publicist is important, because no matter what it is, if it's your brand, your service, your business, yourself, a cause, no matter what it is that you're trying to publicize, when you're too in it, sometimes your emotions can get in the way. For example, you may think your business, your product, your invention is the best thing ever. And it might be. It really might be. However, if you want somebody to also think that, who doesn't know you, doesn't think like you, you're going to have to pitch that concept to a reporter. So having a third party, like a publicist, to be that person who kind of thinks like a reporter can be objective and help you sort of define what's newsworthy and what's not, rather than being driven by emotion. You put entrepreneurs oftentimes have a lot vested in whatever they created, so their emotions will get in the way. So I think
Mhm.
that emotions are good to drive you, but then a publicist is good to help take those emotions and channel them into something newsworthy so you can get attention.
Well, Lynn, as a former journalist, I never met a question I didn't like, right?
That's right. That's
That's
right.
that's exactly right. And I know that your firm is globally recognized, my friend, and it operates under the intersection of both media, business, and influence, my friend. I know that your mission is to help your clients tell their stories, which move the needle in markets when it comes to representing them to the fullest, my friend. And I know you have offices in Palm Beach and London. So tell me about Lynn Aronberg Public Relations firm and what makes it so fabulous, my friends.
Well, I think what makes us different is that we don't specialize in one industry where, a lot of companies will be like, we only do beauty products or we only do authors and publishing. We don't specialize in one industry. We actually consider that a conflict of interest. We believe that you can think more like a journalist if you're more objective and you can find that news hook and sort of look at it like as a journalist. And our specialty is more in the scope, national, international. My experience as a Miami Dolphins cheerleader many moons ago brought me to London. And when I was there, I was also doing public relations for my career. But while I was a cheerleader, we had a publicist. And that publicist, and this is going to show you my age, but the Dolphins played the Giants for the first NFL game in the UK, and I was cheering for the Dolphins. Well, our publicist was taking us around, about 5 women, to publicize and hype up the American football in the UK. So through that experience, his name is Neil Reynolds. I said, Neil, in my real life, I am a publicist. I do PR like you. We should do PR together. We should collaborate. So since then, that's how the London office was born. Now, since then, a lot of clients do not need international publicity. Some do, some don't. So we've been able to mostly be able to just have boots on the ground there and here and share clients and refer clients if we need that. Or if it is an actual client who needs publicity in both places, we're able to do that as well. And frankly, you don't need to have somebody stationed there to get publicity there. So I work with clients in France and Israel and Turkey, all over the world. But it is
Mhm.
nice to have somebody I can work with who's based in the UK.
Well, I tell you, Lynn, there's a sign in my office that says life is a constant game of networking, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And I tend to say I don't like networking. I know you're supposed to. I don't, I've been, ever since my career started, before I started my own company when I turned 30, I worked for a PR agency. And of course, as a junior account executive, it's like, okay, head on out to the Chamber of Commerce networking event. I had to do things like that. Well, it turned out I had my own style of networking. I'm there, and then I
Hmm.
let people come to me, and then I network like that. It seems to work rather than, and I think it may work to my advantage simply because it's the opposite of what you tend to think you're supposed to do. Here's my business card and pass it all around. But, from a very basic grassroots way of networking, that actually has worked for me. In fact, my attorney to this day is the lawyer I met at that chamber networking event. And I was a junior PR person. He was a junior lawyer in his firm. And now anything I need, I go to Michael Vodder at the Ticton Law Group, anything. So it's you, to your point, yes. networking is so valuable, no matter how you end up pulling it off to do it. Nowadays, I think there's fewer and fewer people I'm noticing having physical business cards, and there's different ways to network, of course, than your local chamber. But chambers are good. I think any opportunity, even if you don't like the network, like I claim to not like to do, I still go. I still go. I still show up. Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to ask you, since you brought up the new ways of networking, I'm curious, how do you think the digital age and sites like LinkedIn and the rest have made it easier to network
Well,
today?
like anything else, I think certain platforms, whether new, old, as new ones emerge, they become saturated, right? So LinkedIn a long time ago, in my opinion, used to be a little bit more effective on meeting new business like-minded people. And now it seems to be very saturated with just constant bombardment from sales types. Not to say you still shouldn't use it, because I do believe you should. Um, I just think you have to, you know, find your way through all that chatter. I think that a great way to network, um, even virtually, is say you get involved in a cause in your backyard, wherever you live. Say it's for Leukemia Lymphoma Society, or there's something that you care about, or it's animals, or it's a certain, your industry specific. You then can take that interest of yours, that passion, online, which has a more of a warmer opening to network with those people on LinkedIn who also like animals, who are also part of this organization. You are kind of, you have something in common, rather than just cold turkey being like, hey, can we be friends, or do you want to do business together? Um, I think it gives it a little bit more lead. And then from there, like LinkedIn specifically, if you have 351 people in common, well, then there you go. And then you can kind of go from there without necessarily knowing them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Liv, you tell me that storytelling is an art and a science, and you begin in working with every client by establishing what truly makes them newsworthy and their emotional hook, my friend. So tell me about investing in the relationships of the people that you work with, because I believe whether no matter what type of business you're in, if you're not invested in the common cause, it's really hard to tell a story. So tell me why you believe that storytelling is an art and a science, my friends.
Okay, this might sound controversial, but it's all about the storytelling, and it's my job to be objective. So their story, right? My client is, might be a life coach, might be a author, it might be investors in Israel who are taking American companies, investing in this country and making them go public, and they're concerned about the stock price. And it could be across the board. Every one of those situations, like I said earlier, they are emotionally charged, and that's good for the business owner, the person. But for me, you need somebody who's not just a yes man. You need somebody who's going to be objective, who's going to help you, media train you, like what to lead with and what not to say. Because while you may think that's important and you have a passion for that, if you're doing an interview with the Wall Street Journal and it's not a fluffy lifestyle puff piece, then you need to switch your verbiage and how you're communicating your message. So I connect with my clients by being an expert and garnering trust with them, so they trust me to lead them to the right path and to get their message out to the right audience at the right time. So with like pulling on that heartstring and that emotional, of course, like even fear-based stuff with the hard news, that might garner the attention of the media. um Emotionally charged, like, oh, there's this person who is disadvantaged and then they became this, and that heartwarming story, that's a story angle. That's an angle you find. Sometimes it's hard news. So I did a karate school, a chain of karate schools. It was a franchise. So there were karate schools across the country I was supposed to get publicity for. Well, the schools that listened to what I told them are the ones who got national publicity for one school. I remember Indianapolis. I said, I need from you a human interest story. You tell me a feel good story because I'm going to run with that. I'm going to run with that because I got the business angle covered. He told me two stories. One was a little boy who kicked, no pun intended, his ADHD from karate. And that was on the front page, I think, of Women's Day or Women's World or something like that, just from one karate school in Indianapolis. He did another one. He told me another one where this is great grandmother who became a black belt. So I took her, and I think she might have been on the cover of the Indianapolis Star. So with my direction, he was able to feed me human interest stories that like people like to hear versus just the business story of how successful this franchise across the country became, which we also did. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And it leads into my next one because I wanted to ask you, what's the key to becoming a high leverage closer? And I know that you believe that a relationship building and building trust is important, what we just talked about. But it also goes to the fact of your credibility because I know you don't send a pitch out unless you believe it's newsworthy. So let's talk about being a high leverage closer and what goes into that, my friend.
Okay, so closing in terms of, you don't mean closing a potential new client, you mean closing.
Visibility, yeah. In that
Right,
sense, yeah.
closing the. I always say that too. I'm pitching story ideas to the media. So how do I close that? Gotta tell you, that's why what I do is not the easiest thing in the world. Now, is it? Because we're not buying anything. So the best way, I think 99.9% of it is crafting, uh, doing the job for the reporter. What is their beat? What do they write about? What do they cover? How do they write? Not selling like a car salesman, my client to them, actually doing, they have an editor, they have a producer they have to answer to. So if I can think like that person and not just throw spaghetti at the wall, I can tailor my pitch and I can sell that in about 5 words in the subject line. That is your most likely position to close the deal with that. If that does not work, that's not necessarily your fault. It could be, but it also could be breaking news got ahead of you. Bad day, other things happened. You're on the calendar. Sometimes it's a long lead time, sometimes they're out of town. And then you follow up. I think it's delicate, careful dance in the way in which you reapproach that reporter. So that's another thing PR people do that I do not do. I do not hang my hat solely on my relationships with the media because while that's important, I mean, it's not all there is because when the first day you start in PR, you wouldn't be able to do anything because you don't have any relationships, right? So what you need to be able to do is, and the media changes a lot and they move around, television, they move to higher markets. So I think maintaining relationships while knowing how to craft a news story, knowing how to pitch it appropriately, and knowing how to take the temperature of that specific outlet and or reporter to get that to like it. And if worst case scenario, actually maybe even as important, you want them to like you. Because some PR people are just annoying. You don't want to be annoying. You want them to like you.
Because when they like you, they give you more information, right?
Yeah, they might even say, "Look, Lynn, they're not going to do, they're not going to compromise their own publication or whatever." But what they will do, and I will tell you, I did PR once for um, a global manufacturer and distributor of keratin products for hair care. So they
Mm-hmm.
sold to salons, and there's a small group of very niche market. Well, what happened at the time is the it was getting bad press. Basically, when these women were getting their hair straightened, the fumes that were coming off the product is like formaldehyde, and I guess technically that could kill hairstylists, or it's bad for you. I don't think any stylist ever actually died from that. Anyway, my friend was a reporter, and what I invited her in to get her hair done. My client was the only one in that category who was not slammed by the media for potentially killing hairstylists because of because they liked me, and because, look, Lynn can't possibly be working for a company that they're killing people, and they were not killing people. So they didn't say, oh, this one, Lynn's clients saving the day. They just did not include it in the list of the ones that were bad, and that was a win.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lynn, I know that as you mentioned before, you used to be Miami Dolphins cheerleader, and your journey from cheerleader to CEO has been quite the adventure, my friend. And I know that when you went through your divorce, you turned sort of your victim hood mentality into a story of redemption, resilience, and you really used your PR training to turn around the perception of that story, my friend. So I'm wondering if you can dive into that for me, and how that impacted you as a person and a professional, my friend.
Well, I was married to an elected official in my area, and he had a whole team of people. And I knew as a publicist what could potentially happen with the narrative of our divorce, because just right before that, another politician had got a divorce, and the wife was not the politician, the husband was, and the media slammed her. Now their situation was unique, but she was just getting crushed. Now think about it, because her husband is known by a lot of people because the people elected him, not her. So fewer people know her. So I was like, oh, well, we are going to get in front of this. And that is not going to happen to me, not only because I don't want it to, but because I'm in an industry that I claim to be an expert, and I'm going to manage this accordingly. So it was a little bit organic and a little bit planned, simply because the press was already starting to call and inquire. And I like to maintain relationships with other people in my industry. So my former PR agency that I used to work for happened to be around. I was in the room, and I was talking to a reporter about my own pending divorce. And they said, you know what? Why don't we help you, and why don't we manage the field these calls for you? And I was like, you know what? That is a good idea, because it's important for like attorneys to know when they need an attorney, right? PR people to know when they need a publicist, because somebody needs to, again, not be so emotional and have somebody manage these things for you. My former PR agency happens to just be amazing and not super into politics, so they didn't really care at all. Threw caution to the wind, basically. So not only did they manage this, but they also took it to the next level with my help and my participation. So I turned into sort of the client and the publicist. And with that, it just basically, in my opinion, showed how our ability, because I give them credit and myself, our ability to take, a local district attorney, not the president, and a cheerleader from 20 years ago, not that impressive, tie that to something controversial like Donald Trump, and make it international news. So if we can do that for that situation, we can do that for, frankly, anybody. It showed our ability to publicize.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lynn, you say something that I resonate with as a motivational speaker. So I will tell you a little bit about myself before I ask you my next question. So, Lynn, I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. So I found out at the age of 9 that I wouldn't be able to walk for the duration of my life without assistance, because of the severity of my cerebral palsy, and was going to be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of my life. And something you said or believe is something that I do every day, because as a result of my disability, sometimes my social interaction outside of the walls of getting outside of my house isn't possible because of the limits of my disability. But something you said really resonated with me, because you believe that when we talk about relationship building, you treat every interaction as a potential long-term relationship and not just a transaction. So I'm wondering why you believe that's important, and the importance of inclusion in relationships as well. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I think that's an interesting point slash question, because you know what? I think you're right. I really do um like the relationship with my lawyer from however many years ago. I built a genuine rapport with him, like not thinking that transactionally, like you said. And we became great friends. And I think even I do that with reporters. A very good friend of mine, I met him, and I tried to learn from him when I was early on in my career, because he was a hard Associated Press health and news reporter, and he would just tear him up, the hospitals and all that community. He liked me. I liked him. I was kind to him. He was kind to me. I asked him questions, respected him. To this day, we are very good friends. So I think beyond the business, just connecting with people on a real level
Mm-hmm.
is pretty much comes naturally to me, but I do think that it's been helpful in my career as well. In fact, I maintain, if you don't like me or we don't get along, something's probably wrong with you. And I'm serious, because I get along with everybody. If I don't, which is weird, I don't even know, I can think of one person. We will not name that person's name. Something's wrong with that person, because I know my heart. I know my intention. I know that I am not going into any situation wishing anybody harm. I just want to, like, let's have a good time. Let's get business done. Let's, whatever I try to lift people up, and not because I'm a do-gooder, or I'm trying. I want to see people succeed. And I think that's just because I'm happy most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I think these long term, like you, Kevin, we'll probably be friends forever now.
I I'm always open to new relationships. Absolutely, my friend.
And it's not, when I say friend too, it's I think friends, it's they just they can come and they can go, and
Mm-hmm.
people get busy. I just really value I think my five best friends. One I met when I was two. Another one is from middle school. Another one is from Dolphins cheerleading, and the last one, I think that might be four. She passed away recently suddenly, but I've maintained that core group of friends most of my whole life, and from
Mm-hmm.
different stages in life. And the new friends that I've created and developed, they're not the same type of friend, but they're people I respect and I appreciate. And if we may not speak every day, but we see each other, or whatever. And if you're in town, you get the opportunity, or you want to include somebody. Like, I like to have things. If there's ever a chance to include someone that might really want to attend something, I'll reach out to them.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know who's wanting and what new relationships you can build, right?
Right. Outside of public relations. So public relations, my business specifically and they may, those worlds may merge, which I would assume they do, but I don't think of it like that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that that's why it works. I'm not trying to befriend people because they might be a reporter one day or a client or something like that. It's just like, I think there's more to life than just work, even though my work sort of identify as my identity, because it's
Mm-hmm.
been consistent and I've always done it. I mean, I majored in it and I've never done anything else, but that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Lynn, I'm also curious to ask you about building brand consistency, and I know you're someone that believes that consistency and clarity are interconnected. And my friend, I'm curious because you believe that the strongest brands evolve, but they don't sort of drift away from their core message. So I'm wondering your thoughts on building brand consistency, clarity, and the strongest brands. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I think building a brand, a strong brand with longevity, you have to think about it from the beginning or as soon as you, if you're new to a company or something like that, start thinking about it long term. Long term. PR is long term. So it's all about planning. So once because you run the risk of creating a brand, creating publicity, creating that buzz, that restaurant opening, or making a splash about something, but then it dies. There's new people short attention spans, right? And there's new stuff. So it's important for you to take that brand and constantly be thinking about how to make yourself relevant. And if you're not relevant, if you're not doing anything, then maybe there's something you didn't promote in the past. For example, somebody at the company who's celebrating their 15th year anniversary and gives back to the community. Maybe that person's never been profiled. That's a news angle. Your company maybe didn't do anything groundbreaking this week, but it doesn't matter. There's always something newsworthy. And if you don't know what it is, a PR person would. So there, like I mentioned earlier, there's business profiles, there's new product launches, there's community involvement. You can take depending on if you're a one-man shop or you're a big corporation, you can sign up to do the turkey trot, right? Participate in that, be involved in the community, and get involved and get press coverage that way. You can even draft a press release about the unveiling of your new website. Will you get press coverage on it? Maybe not, maybe so, hard to say. But even drafting a press release and putting that on your website, for example, sometimes people think that's news. Like sometimes you can just list your press releases. I've done that with very well funded companies, very well. They have lots of money. They still would take every press release, whether it was picked up by the press or not. It was the news that they were announcing, and it was listed down. It was pretty impressive because at some point, even if the press were to look, they're like, "Oh, look, they did this, they did that, they did that." So my recommendation for ongoing brand recognition is to continue pushing out that news or that information or that award. If you didn't get an award, maybe you can create an award. Why can't you create an award? And then you put out a press release. Nobody can stop anybody from creating an award, like the National Kevin Awareness Day. Kevin, then you can, I mean, technically, when it's a national or international awareness you want to get on the books, you have to like register for that. But you can give out the Kevin Award if you want to your favorite guest. Like you could award me the Kevin Podcast Award for this year if you wanted. And then we could write a press release about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And you led into my next question because I believe that branding and marketing strategies are sort of interconnected. And I'm curious to ask you, Lynn, what are your thoughts on creating an effective marketing message and what elements do you think have to be incorporated into an effective and successful marketing message? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Okay, so I'm careful to not go outside my lane, but I try not to be too like closed-minded too. I have to be more open. So, marketing is a whole circle and PR is part of that, right? So, like I'm taking that message, crafting it, doing a lot of that and getting it out there. But if the message that the people made and advertised and put on their cans and all that stuff that they did prior to me or without me isn't in line with the messaging, we have a problem, and that's when I would help with that part. So the marketing is important. Now, it's very important. So because marketing can be grassroots marketing. It can be like, what are you doing at the trade shows? Are you going to trade shows? Are you involved in the community? How did you brand? What colors did you pick? What font? What does your website look like? What kind of marketing are you advertising? What kind of bot or billboards? There's a million ways to market, right? So while I specialize in that media relations component, so securing media coverage, ongoing positive media attention, national, international, online. The marketing, if it's not done correctly or it's in contrast, like the website is saying things differently, like I'm pitching the media this way, they get to the website, it could ruin my opportunity to get that press coverage. So I will work to the best of my ability to draft content if needed. I don't sell myself like I'm going to draft content for your website, but if I need to, because we need to fix this, I'll roll up my sleeves and we will fix that and help with that messaging. Or I will take their messaging and make it sound better because they already spent a lot of money on whatever they are doing, and I'll do work with what I can. But that's how, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm also curious to ask you about managing a public relations sort of setback or crisis when you work with clients, because especially if you're working with high-level clients who have a lot of notoriety, they will at some point experience adversity. So I'm wondering, how do you help your clients deal with setbacks and adversity from a public relations standpoint?
Okay, well, that's first you try to have a plan in place, a crisis communication plan, depending on a celebrity or a large company or even a small company, whoever it is. You want to have some sort of plan in place, even though you don't know what crisis might occur. There's always systems you can have that are generally speaking. But when something happens, you want to get in front of the story if you can. You want to never hide from the media. Do not, I don't know why so many people do this. It's the worst thing you can do because you know what they're going to do? Just like my friend Phil taught me, the health reporter for the AP, he did all the healthcare stuff. And we became very good friends. He taught me at the beginning of my career, he's like, Lynn, whatever happens, do not hide from the media because we have a job to do. If you don't talk to us and tell us what you put your own 2 cents in, we're going to write the story our own way. And we're going to dig and we're going to write it our way because you won't speak to us. So I highly encourage you to speak to the media, but do it in a way that's thought out, that hopefully somebody will coach you on what you're going to say. And also that oftentimes that will go hand in hand with attorneys, and attorneys can be kind of annoying, but you do the best that you can because attorneys are super cautious, and PR people, like with my divorce, my attorneys are like, just don't tell me what you're doing. Just do not tell me what you're doing, because I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm publicizing this divorce. So it depends on the situation. I really need somebody, I think, an expert that can help you best with crisis communications. If you're a celebrity, high known, or something crazy has happened in your corporation or your business, you just can't hide from the media. You have a side to tell. Tell them. Or if you did something bad, then you need to talk to your lawyers and your attorney and go from there. It just depends on the level. But generally speaking, if the media is calling, do not hide from them.
Because then, if you talk to them, you can control the narrative, so to speak, or get your side of the story out, right?
They're going to write it anyway. They will cover this story.
Yeah.
You need to tell them. You can even, there's crafty ways. So when you do PR for politicians and campaigns, I thoroughly enjoy that. I enjoy that so much because you are publicizing your client, right? But you're taking down your opponent. And I know a lot of people don't like this, but from a behind the scenes, the way it's like a game of chess. So you feed what you want to feed, right? And then there's constant crisis communications because the other side is trying to take you down. So you do your own negative research on yourself in advance to understand what they may do to you. And you prepare that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm curious also to ask you, when people are researching PR firms or want PR representation, always advise your clients or people that you talk to about PR to ask three specific questions, my friend. And I'm wondering your thoughts on those questions and what people should be thinking about when they're looking for public relations representation. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I mean, I think that specialization is something that one would think you want. Like they'll say, if you just created like a beauty product and you want to sell it online or something like that, you would, I think the general person would probably go look for a PR company that specializes in beauty brands.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that's an asset. I think you are the last. If the beauty editor at Cosmopolitan calls that PR agency for a quote, you are likely the last person they are going to give that quote to because they have a roster of clients at that agency full of beauty brands. And unless you pay the highest retainer, you're likely not going to be the one that they give that story to. So, but if you're the only beauty brand, because I only take one client per industry, there's never a conflict, then you will be that category for them. That's the first thing. I would hate to say all specialty agencies are the wrong way to go. I would just be cautious of that. And I would
Mm-hmm.
ask that question, how they handle it when you have everyone doing the same thing as I do. Um, I would ask them about their media relationships. If they always say, and all agencies are like, I know all the media, I have friends in the media, blah, blah, that's not enough. Do not let that be the only answer. You ask them, do they have the resources? Is their agency funded well enough to have the resources needed, the platforms that you need to, in real time, have those media contacts and their contact information and who works at that magazine today, because it changes like this. And there are companies out there, it's expensive, but well-funded agencies have those resources. Because the people who say, oh, I just know John, no, John probably doesn't even work at Newsweek anymore. But don't believe them for that only. And if he does, he might not next week. So what resources do you have? Because Edelman, Porter Novelli, every large worldwide agency has invested in technology that helps them stay up to date with what's happening because it's virtually impossible for you to do alone. And lastly, I would ask them, I would listen to how they talk.
Mm-hmm.
Are they thinking about, oh, we're going to throw a party for you. Oh, we're going to do a red carpet. Or are they saying, we are going to do this so that it garners the attention of these people who will invest in your company or who will buy your product or it will affect that stock price. Do they understand business well enough to know that you, the client, wants to make money or create awareness and not make money if that were the situation? Whatever you want, but generally it's business. It's all business. So they need to care about your bottom line. Now, PR cannot directly tell you that awareness I created created this much money, but it's important for the PR person to verbalize and understand that that is your goal, and their goal is to do that, even though it might be difficult to measure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lynn, I'm curious to get your perspective on how we can help women achieve more success in business. Because if you ask me, I think women are overtaking the world in a positive way, my friends. What do you think is the key for women to continue their positive trajectory in business, my friend?
You know, women, from my experience, it's never been a problem being a woman in business. If anything, I think it's been an asset and or just the same. Like I worked for myself most of my career. So when I turned 30, I had my own company. So for 6 years prior to that, I worked for somebody. And my boss, it was all based on, are you good or are you not? not gender. So that's my experience. I realize that's not everybody else's. So I think that if you're a woman or a man, your results and your resolve and your ability to deliver matters more. And I think women are great. I think women are I don't know if I don't know the numbers. I don't know if more women are. I think women are awesome. Actually, I was just watching on Amazon Prime, Catherine the Great, and I mean that was a long time ago. She was running Russia, like a woman for her reign was a long time. So I think women. There have been a lot of women rulers and people in charge for a long time. So, but I do know that it is a narrative, it's a theme. I'm sure there's something to it. Obviously, women here weren't allowed to vote. That's not good. So I know that we've come a long way. I understand that, but I think it's a benefit to be a woman. I love being a woman, and I think that today, in this day and age, we can do anything. So in the past, things have happened. I know I mentioned Catherine the Great, but like my point was, it's just in different eras and different places and different circumstances, women have done a great, ruled, been in charge. And then in some places, it's been unfortunate for them. But today, I think no woman should feel like she can't do it all because she can do anything a guy is capable of doing in terms of business. I mean, I don't know about like generally speaking, I don't know if they're physically as strong as most men, but I mean, I don't know. Like physically, like I don't want to go and be an NFL football player, for example. I'd rather be the cheerleader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lynn, I'm living with a disability and being a speaker and talking about workplace inclusion for folks with disabilities. I'm curious to ask you, how do you think tenacity and being tenacious is a benefit in business? And secondarily, I'm also curious to ask you about why do you think in business, and I realize hiring may not be your everyday bailiwick, but I'm curious about why do you think hiring for folks with disabilities might be an inclusive advantage for employers who implement such a strategy? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Ooh, I think, well, the first part of your question, I think the tenacity is key for everyone. I think that grit, that tenacious way of living, to just keep going, to not give up no matter what, is important for everybody. I think somebody with a disability, same. I have friends and family members who have I'm not going to have disabilities as well, and I think that it takes a special person and somebody who likely needs that extra push because they're dealing with these issues. But I think that anybody with a disability who is turned away for having a disability for whatever reason, that is a blessing because that is nowhere you need to be working, associating yourself with, and that likely company or organization or group of people is certainly not somebody that you want to be around anyway. Mm-hmm. So I would look at that as I dodged a bullet because that is ridiculous and that is their loss. And unless, of course, like I said earlier with men and women, if the person with the disability is just not as qualified, not because of the disability, but qualified for whatever said situation it is, then they perhaps weren't selected not because of the disability, but simply because they weren't the best candidate. So I think but if you can determine it's because of the disability, well, then again, I maintain that organization, frankly, I would like them to call me and we will spread the word on how outrageous that is, because that's discrimination. That really bothers me. There's nothing I dislike more than a bully, and I consider that a bully as an adult, a bully adult, That's insane.
Yeah, the reason I asked the question, and I'll end with my final one in just a second, because the reason I fell into public speaking. So I originally graduated college in 2010 with a journalism degree, and I went on 10 consecutive job interviews, and news directors would tell me I would be qualified to work in newsrooms, but because of my disability, they wouldn't hire me at the time. And it actually took me 6.5 years out of college to get my first paying job because of my disability. And the reason I ask about tenacity is because that's how I've lived my life. I believe that, the number one saying in my life is that inclusion is the gateway to independence. And the reason I specialize in becoming a speaker for talking about employment inclusion is because I believe that, in life that we're all given 52, a deck of 52 playing cards, and it's incumbent upon all of us to sort of stack them in the direction that we want life to go. So I appreciate your perspective on tenacity, and that leads it to my last question.
Wait,
Yeah, go
may I
ahead.
ask you, may I ask you a question?
Absolutely,
Are
yeah.
you telling me that those newsrooms, those job interviews you went on, they told you because of your disability that they wouldn't hire you? And my second question is, isn't that illegal?
You would think, yeah. They told me when I went on job interviews that I was qualified, but because of limited resources in newsrooms, they couldn't sort of dispense in it. Because when I went through college, I always had a cameraman to do shooting because of the nature of my disability, and they couldn't divulge the resources in a newsroom to hire me on a full-time basis.
Did you talk to an attorney?
I was 22 at the time, and I just wanted to be accepted. So what I did out of college, Lynn, was I volunteered for 4 straight years for a nonprofit television station. I told them that I didn't want to get paid. I just wanted to prove myself, and
Okay.
through that experience, I covered 50 stories for this news station, and I was noticed because I live in Canada, so I was noticed by our provincial government, and they eventually hired me to be an ambassador for hiring people with disabilities
Oh,
on a provincial government level. So it all came full circle.
wow. Okay, look at you. Okay. Yeah, so that that's wonderful. I think that's great. That's so great. So you didn't just go lawyer up, you did it, you did that route, and I'm so happy for you that it worked out like that. But I am bothered by the beginning of your story, but it sounds like it all worked out in the end. I'm sorry, that's it's troubling to think about that because it's a shame that like you in the end, right, you went and you did what you had to do to then demonstrate your ability, you quite capable, and how you are capable to fit into an organization that you add real value, but you had to go that route. But in the end, being angry about it, I guess, is not the way to to look at it. In the end, it's like that was your path and it worked out well. And you're happy. Are you happy with the way that worked out?
Life is always a learning lesson, Lynn, and I always say that it takes more energy to be disappointed and angry than it does to be happy. So,
Understood. Understood. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I feel like the more you just keep your eye on the ball moving forward,
mhm.
and like you said, that tenacity. Sometimes you have those hurdles, and everybody has different ones to deal with. And forging forward is key. because if you can't give up, it's never easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lynn, as a communicator, I'm curious to end on this note. What do you think makes a great communicator, and how do you want your own individual and personal and professional legacy to be defined, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
What makes a good communicator and how do you create a legacy? Is that
Yeah, yeah, and how do you want your own legacy to be defined? Yeah.
well, I think what makes a good communicator is listening. Definitely listening. I've learned that a lot when I worked in overseas, and working with other cultures in other countries, and knowing what you don't know. So the more you can observe and listen when you do talk, you actually have something to say of value. If not, then maybe you should not talk and just keep listening. I think that that's not always easy because people like the, and I'm one of those. But I think the best communicators know how to listen, and I think the best communicators are garner trust. If you are trusted, then the audience will listen to what you're saying. And in terms of my legacy, that's a good question. I think that I would like to leave a legacy of all the clients, all my long list roster of clients over the years will be happy and grateful that I was able to help their business get the attention that it deserved. And hopefully that's something that will stay with them because that was their goal. Oftentimes their business is their baby. It's what really, really matters to them outside their children and their families. So hopefully that I'm tied, they will remember the little piece of the pie that I helped them or with.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lynn, my final question for you is, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that, my friend?
I would say to email me at lynn@lynnaronberg.com or connect with me on any of the socials platforms, which is always Lynn Aronberg. But directly making sure it comes in my inbox, I would say Lynn, Lynn, at Lynn Aronberg, ARONBERG.com. And just in the subject, I would say Kevin podcast.
Fabulous. And Lynn, I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I'll end our initial conversation there. And I want to thank you for the work that you do to promote journalism through public relations and to give people a real publicly facing voice of prominence and influence. My friend, you're doing great work, and I was honored to spend some time with you. And I want to thank you for being here and giving me the privilege of engaging in conversation with you this morning. It's most appreciated.
Of course. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.